Welcome, everybody, to this webinar hosted by the Labor Working Group of the Socialist Party USA. Today, we have members of Teamsters Mobilize here with us that we're going to talk about their work, working as a rank and file caucus within the Teamsters Union. And they got jump-started through work on the collective bargaining contract from 2023 to 2024, 2023. And we've been hearing about them ever since. And we'll address all kinds of issues regarding that and how they got started and among other things. The Labor Working Group is a working group within the SPUSA for members to deal with labor issues, to labor education, to get organized at the locals to do labor solidarity work, among other things. And it's very crucial. Socialists have to be in labor, have to be in the labor movement if it's going to be any kind of socialist movement. So today we have Teamsters Mobilized. Generally, what from their website I read, their Teamsters Mobilized is a grassroots organization of Teamster activists organizing to build up real worker power in our union against our employers and their cronies, to expose corrupt Teamster leadership, and to build brick by brick a genuine fighting labor movement. That's a great statement. And there's a lot that we agree with. Creating worker power among in the labor movement is essential, and it has to be built up from grassroots up. It has to be the rank and file workers that do that make this happen. What we'll do is I'm the chair of the Labor Working Group, and we're happy to have everybody here. And I'll pass this on to Colby to introduce all the individual Teamster Mobilized members, and he'll moderate from here.
Thanks, Bill. We are absolutely thrilled to have TM with us. We've been just overjoyed to be able to help support and work with as they have been trying to, like they said, build worker power from the shop floor up. So real quick introduction of folks that we have here from TM. Big Will Pina. Is it Pina, Big Will?
Pina, like pineapple, yes.
Got it. Who's been with UPS for 3 decades, and he's a full-time package car driver with Local 369 out in California. Excuse me, 396 out in California. Jennifer Hancock, who also has been with UPS for about a part of 3 decades. She's a part-timer in Richmond with Local 322. And Jess Lister, who is the newbie on the block with only 7 years at UPS, but she's been a shop steward for 5 of those with Local 728 in Georgia. So thank you all for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So let's yeah, absolutely. So let's get this started, and I would love to hear from kind of all 3 of you just to begin, but to start with what the genesis of both TM as a organization, but what led you as workers to feel the need that this was something that needed to happen? So there's the genesis of TM itself, but for you, given your roles, given the time that you've been in, what sort of brought you into that?
Fairness. For me, it was fairness. Okay, this is going to be a very UPS-centric conversation, just warning the audience. We're all UPSers, and that's what TM came out of, was UPS. Part-time UPS employees do the same labor as full-time employees inside the warehouse specifically, but are paid on a vastly less wage scale than the full-timers. And when this new contract came around, part-timers, specifically part-timers that had met each other through TDU, got together, started chatting about the discrepancies among part-timers across the country, and those conversations just grew. So for me, a lot, TM, I know we're going to get into deeper depth on how TM came about, but it was a sense of fairness. I've been with UPS for 33 years. I have good benefits. I make good wages, and I'm looking at my brothers and sisters coming up behind me, and it's a whole different world than when I started. I could go to college on a UPS part-time wage. These days, that world, gas was 89 cents a gallon. That world is completely gone, and UPS wages have not kept up with that. So let me put enough talking for me. Let me pass it over to Big Will.
For me, joining Teamsters Mobilize as a full-timer was my deep solidarity with part-timers. And I saw that as something that was lacking within our ranks. And I wanted to make sure that our part-timers knew that there was a full-timer that had their backs during the negotiations, so they could win a better life and win better wages and win better benefits for themselves. I came out of the 1994 strike, and back then, part-timers were being taken a little more seriously than they are now. We had our great General President Ron Carey that came out of New York, and he was a militant. And the building that I came out of was also very militant, and the part-timers were really very, very much militant. We basically ran that building. So for me, my part-time years were very important. It instilled my political ideology in me. It made me the Teamster that I am today because of those people back then. Back then, in 1997, the slogan was, part-time America doesn't work, and that still resonates with me. All the organizing that happened around the strike still resonates with me. That strike touched my life, and I was a part-time employee at the time. And if you've ever been part of a strike changes your life. It really does. It shows you what the radical solidarity means, and it shows you that the community is there for you, that it's there to back you up. So in that tradition, I came out of that tradition, the Ron Carey, era, where we had a lot of political education. Back in those days, TDU had somebody outside the gates giving out flyers, giving out a lot of things for you to take home and read. And that's where I got my education from. So I felt that was lacking, and I felt that I needed to show that type of solidarity that those brothers showed me when I was out there in the picket lines, full-time and part-time. So that's why I felt the need to join Teamsters Mobilize, and that's why there's a need for Teamsters Mobilize right now. Because for me, the part-timers are the most exploited, most thrown under the bus workers that we have at UPS, and that needs to stop. And we need to show each other respect if we're going to actually have a fighting labor movement, and we need to show strength and solidarity with each other. And that's why I'm here. And I'll pass it over to Jess.
Not to get in front of Jess too much, but I also want to point out, and I think maybe Jennifer noted this, if I remember correctly, it's something like 60% of UPS is part-time. So the workers themselves make up the vast majority. Just want to reiterate that because folks probably don't really think about that when they think about UPS, but UPS runs on part-time work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're the majority of the membership there. If they wanted to, I mean, if they got organized, they could run the place, so that's strength. We'll talk about that later, but that's part of our organizing that we're going to do. That's getting the part-timers more involved with the union, and get them to vote, get them to show up at meetings. So with that, I'll pass it to Jess.
So I actually started at UPS out in Denver, Colorado. And it didn't take very long at all to see all the injustices on the shop floor, from the company not caring about you as a person, not caring about your safety, and just trying to get as much work done as possible. They didn't care about the quality of the work. It's just a numbers game. Shoving it down your throat and caring about nothing else while treating you like garbage. Enough is never enough. No matter how good of a job you do, you're never appreciated. You're never treated well. It's just worse and worse. And I wanted to do something about it. So eventually I started going to union meetings. I became a union steward so that I was able to fight back against the company, file on contract violations, empower my fellow workers to learn about the contract, the rights that we do have, and to be able to exercise those rights on the shop floor. So when it came time to start negotiating a contract, I knew the huge disparity between the part-timers and the full-timers. And I knew that I wanted to do whatever I can to try to help us win a strong contract. So I said that I was going to just pour myself into the contract campaign. And during that time, that's when I found Teamsters Mobilize, started talking to these folks, and, very quickly they were my people. And I knew that I was in the fight with the right people. And so, I've been all in ever since. And I'm very lucky to find these people, because you need that system of support. You need those people fighting alongside you to keep that fight, because there are so many forces against us that it can beat you down sometimes. And you need those people arm in arm with you to remind you why you're doing this, and, to keep your head up and keep pushing.
Let me, if I can't, just jump into this from a slightly different angle. We heard mention of Teamsters for a Democratic Union, right? And obviously IBT is the union itself. Why did you not feel like that you had enough resources already? Why do you feel like it was lacking? Like you didn't have that needed something like this? If we could just briefly sort of touch on that. But we'll go back to Jennifer on that. We'll start with that.
Okay. Why did TM not have the resources that we needed? Sorry, rephrase that real quick.
Sure, absolutely. Well, obviously you're all in the union already, and there are even groups that had been in the past reform movements. So I'm just wondering, for the audience in particular, and just in general, why did you not feel like you already had the resources you needed to address the issues that you felt like you had? I mean, Jess talks about the disrespect on the shop floor and all of those issues. Why wasn't that already in place?
I've joked about this, but it's like part-timers within the Teamsters are invisible. As soon as you go full-time, it's like you pop in existence as a fully formed Teamster, but before then you're invisible. I don't understand why the Teamsters do not seem to take part-time employees seriously. We pay union dues just like the full-timers do. If I had to guess, it's because so many of our part-timers are short-term employees. There is a lot of, especially as UPS has moved away from being a private company to a public company. Wages have not kept up with inflation. The number of part-timers coming in the door and out the door has gotten the churn is a lot higher than it used to be when I started 3 decades ago. So I feel like that for the Teamsters, it's not for them. They don't feel like it's worth the effort and time to educate or engage with employees that are going to be gone very shortly. When they go full-time, I think they see that as an employee that's worth an investment at that point, someone who is probably going to stay with the company for some time. That is a guess on my part, though. But Jess is correct. Unions typically do not see their don't see their part-timers, period. Now I'll go ahead and pass that on to Big Will.
You asked about TDU, and I'm a member of TDU as well. And there's not enough support coming from them either in terms, when it comes to part-time issues. They're just there to give you the information, and there's no support after that. So Teamsters Mobilize is that support. Because we know that we have each other's backs actually on the shop floor. We talk to each other. We try to resolve our issues amongst each other, and that's what's lacking with TDU, right? In terms of resources, we're a new group. We hope to build those resources. We hope to be, the missing, to fill in for that missing piece that's not there right now. And we want other trade unionists to come and join us and engage in that fight. So, like there's a whole host of issues why it's not enough. There's never enough when you're fighting the boss. And if you don't have that type of solidarity amongst workers, you're gonna feel alone and you're gonna feel vulnerable. So I guess you could say we're the support system for workers. We want to speak to them, we want to engage with them, we want to educate them. And you don't see that from TDU, you don't see that from the IBT. Right? When you come and you engage with us, we'll tell you, we're your support. We're gonna give you the knowledge that you need in order for you to overcome whatever issues you have on the shop floor. That's the mission of Teamsters Mobilize, I feel. And I'll pass that on to Jess.
Yeah, so the part-time job at UPS is not sustainable long-term. The majority of part-timers that come through, they're using it as a stepping stone. They want to go driving. They know that that's the only sustainable job at UPS. That's where the money is. So it's kind of an understanding that you come in as a part-timer and everything from there is based on seniority. You do your time. When a driving bid sheet is posted, you sign your name and the positions are given out by seniority. So that's what everybody is hoping for, right? They're trying to stay just long enough until they can get into that full-time driving spot. For people that can't or do not want to go driving for various reasons, the part-time job is not sustainable. The hours vary every single day. You don't start at the same times. You don't finish at the same times. It makes it very hard to work a second job. With the wages that you're getting, most people aren't even making $100 a day. And that doesn't pay the bills. Even if you are able to find a second job that is working with your schedule, most of those are part-time jobs. They're not paying any better, right? You're going to a second job to make less than $100 at that job. So, you're trying to piece these jobs together, along with the treatment and the way that they break people down mentally. It's just not something that most people are able to sustain long-term. And that's by design. Turnover is profitable for the company. The next person that comes in, they pay them less than they did the person that just walked out the door. They don't have to pay health insurance for 9 months. They don't have to pay holidays, vacations for a whole year. It's very profitable to get people in the door that haven't been there yet and get people that have already there out the door. So they love that. The union wants to put the blame on the part-timers and say, oh, the part-timers don't get involved. That's not how part-timers get involved. The reason that I've learned as much as I have is because I sought it out myself at every step. Union wasn't coming to me to teach me. TDU wasn't coming to me to teach me. I had to look for that stuff myself. It is on the union. The responsibility is on the union to educate its members, to bring their members in, to make the information and the union meetings accessible for people. Right now, we have one local in the entire state of Georgia for UPSers. A lot of times, that could be a 4-hour drive one way to get to a union meeting on a Saturday morning. So you would first of all have to be a UPS employee that doesn't work Saturdays. And then you would have to be willing to sacrifice your entire Saturday to go to a union meeting. Our union is opposed to offering any kind of accessibility to our union meetings via Zoom or something like that. If it's not accessible to people, they're automatically going to write it off, right? And the union, they can say they want more involvement, but when you start getting involved, you see that the union doesn't actually want that involvement. They do everything they can to keep people that aren't arm's reach, right? They want to keep you back. They want to appease you and thank you for coming to the meetings, but they don't really want you involved. So, you know, it benefits them by not making stuff more accessible because they can maintain the control and control the narrative. That's what they really want. They don't want a rank and file led union. They don't want it to be bottom up. They like it the way that it currently is, which is top down.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to change.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, so just moving from, and thank you for that. Thinking about, so the start of all this is really the contract last year, right? And certainly I know from our end, you know, Labor Working Group, SPUSA, we were very, you know, part of what started all this is us wanting to be in support of what had the potential to be the largest labor action in history, right? In the United States, or at least in recent history. So, but that didn't happen. There are a lot of reasons for that, but I just wanted to see, to sort of go back to that point and go through sort of the contract process and the outcomes and how, you know, as thinking about this as labor organizers and people that are activists inside of that situation, just walk us through how that sort of all happened. And as TM was sort of getting started, like how those two things came together, the issues that were happening with the contract, TM's formulation, and, you know, how those things sort of merged and affected one another.
Yes, it is true that the contract is what kicked all of this off. Part-timers wanted to be more involved. As I mentioned earlier, Peter posted something in a TDU chat saying, hey, any part-timers want to chat about the contract? And several of us got involved. And originally we had hoped to organize under the umbrella of TDU. Our original goal was actually some sort of UPS part-timer caucus within TDU, like their women's caucus, for example. And we went to the TDU convention that year to make that pitch, and we got shot down. TDU, the explanation we were given was that the Black caucus and the women's caucus, that was somebody's fundamental identity. A part-timer, that did not define us as a class because, you know, we can easily stop being part-time. So they did basically a generic resolution of support, which immediately disappeared, never to be seen again. And we regrouped and developed our own figured out what we wanted to campaign on. And we released a flyer and a petition in, I think, late January, early February of 2023, I believe, when that was the contract year. And, you know, kept on going from there. That was the first year. The second year, I did actually have a conversation with someone at TDU about TM, and TDU's position was essentially that they were not going to call out individual companies. And at that point, I knew that TDU and Teamsters Mobilize were essentially incompatible at that point. They are interested in training shop stewards to, you know, which is great. I'm all for training shop stewards. I've needed the services of a shop steward many times, but the specific issues surrounding UPS part-timers and the systematic issues with the contract and part-timers, that was going to be up to us, the actual part-timers. Big Will?
Yeah, just to jump on Jennifer's point and from a full-timer's point of view, my point was that being a full-timer, I have to give a hand to the part-timers. I have to help them to lift them up. And like Jennifer said, you know, TDU isn't about that. You know, they're not about that. They're about just education and nothing else. So, it's like it's so difficult because when you're in that position, you have a lack of education amongst workers that don't understand, you know, why we have to help part-timers when you're a full-timer. You know, it's all about what can I get for myself, and that's not what trade unionism is all about. It's about how we're going to help, you know, the most vulnerable in our ranks, you know, and that's a lack of education. And if you're talking about, you know, if TDU is going to educate, or our union, the Teamsters, are going to educate, they have failed. You can see it. It's a failure. And once again, that's why Teamsters Mobilize exists. We're here to make sure that people understand, you know, this is the way bosses divide us between class at work and in society. You have, you know, one group of workers fighting another group of workers, instead of focusing on the real, you know, on the real fight, which is a fair and equitable contract for everyone. So that's what I feel that, you know, that needs to be what needs to be done, you know, as far as full-time to, you know, to help part-timers out. And I'll pass it over to Jess.
Jess, can I add to my other question for you too, just to think about, because you know, hearing all this, what, for folks that don't remember the history, what was it about the contract that TM really found itself in a position where it couldn't support it during that process? Because you guys were by pretty much the only group that came out and said this, you know, this contract is not good enough. So what was it during that process? I don't mean to say you don't talk about the other stuff, but I'm curious, you know, just for the history's sake, like, how did that happen?
Well, Teamsters Mobilize, it came out with basically a bottom dollar, $25 an hour starting wage for part-timers is what we needed to see. And we came up with that number because prior to 1982, full-timers and part-timers made the same wage. The only difference was the amount of hours that they got, but they made the same hourly wage. And that contract in 1982 started the separation where full-timers increased, part-timers stayed down at $8 an hour. And they stayed at $8 an hour for like 30 years. They hardly got a single raise on the starting wage for part-timers. And we took that number, we took $8 an hour and we plugged it into an inflation calculator and adjusted for inflation, which this was, you know, at least a year ago, prior to coming out with this number. It was like $26.50 would be the equivalent. So for us to even be at the equivalent of what our part-time brothers and sisters made in the 1980s, that number should be like $26.50. We just kind of rounded on a nice even $25 an hour. We thought that was the absolute minimum that we needed to see in the contract. And so we pushed that. And during these negotiations, you heard Sean O'Brien mention part-timers a lot. He never said anything concrete. He just mentioned part-timers repeatedly. Oh, we need to take care of our part-timers. We need to take care of our part-timers, especially our senior part-timers, right? We need catch-up raises. We need this and that. But he would never actually commit to any kind of number. He wouldn't even speak of a number. Earlier in the contract campaign, TDU actually put out materials that said starting wage of $25 per hour for part-timers. I still have those palm cards that I passed out within my own building from TDU. And within weeks of them pushing that, it disappeared. And the news that we were hearing is that came down from Sean O'Brien. Sean O'Brien specifically told TDU they needed to take that off. So TDU obeyed. They got rid of it. We never saw a sign of it again. So because of us not hearing anything other than the word part-timers during all of these speeches, we were setting ourselves up as though it wouldn't happen. We knew that that probably wasn't going to be what we were going to see. And so we kind of came up with the slogan, 25 is the low, or we vote no, right? So if that wasn't met, we were automatically going to vote no, right? There was plenty of other things that we needed to see in the contract. We needed to see protections around harassment and retaliation. That is rampant. That is rampant across part-time, full-time. They do not discriminate when it comes to harassment and retaliation. Everybody gets it. Whether you're the best worker, you're a mediocre worker, everybody gets harassed and retaliated against for doing nothing but your job. So, you know, we didn't see those protections, but it wasn't a single issue for us. But the wage alone, if it wasn't at least at that 25 number, we were automatically going to vote the contract down. And we got a lot of people behind that. We knew that if, you know, people in my building before that contract ever came out, we knew what we were looking for. And if it wasn't there, we weren't going to support the contract.
Thank you for that. And obviously the contract did pass, but we are now in this place where a lot of the issues that were raised, as you're pointing out, before the contract passed, haven't been resolved, and issues that were even supposed to be sort of resolved by the contract, or at least addressed at some point, continue to be an issue. We, the three of us, have sort of had some conversations, and we talked about ongoing issues both at UPS that workers are facing, as well as issues in IBT following the contract and sort of what's been going on. So open it up to you three to sort of address this, but I wonder if we could talk about sort of, because I think it's really important to see the connection between the struggle for the contract. You know, the contract gets done, but that doesn't stop, right? To get anything that you want, you still have to go continue to fight for it on the floor. So just addressing sort of that, and the substantive big issue here that I think we're all looking at is, why is the union not doing what it needs to do, right? They're supposed to be the ones to do it. So I open that up for folks to sort of pick it. I don't know if Big Will or Jess wants to sort of lead us off, whatever works.
Yeah, I mean, just to pick up on Jess's points, after we saw the contract and we read it, and it was time to vote for it, we already knew that there was things in there that were going to open us up to a lot of abuse by management. Like she said, the harassment wasn't addressed properly. You know, you get a if you get harassed, you get a monetary amount of money or whatever. That's not good enough. We want to see actual penalties on these people when they come after us like that for no apparent reason, like Jess says, when we're doing our jobs. The technology issues, right? The unfair production standard issues, those things were not addressed. The protections for drivers, right? And on Mondays when the routes are light, that wasn't addressed. A whole host of issues. The heat issues that they touted so much that they won in our package cars for protections against heat were not won, even though they say they were. I haven't seen an air-conditioned truck, but you know what I have seen? I've seen new equipment in the trucks that are there to track the packages and speed up our production, both the preload and the driver installed in the vehicles, but no air conditioning. That is a slap on our faces. I'm literally talking about like a few days ago, they just literally installed a new piece of equipment into my truck to track the packages inside. It's like a high-tech piece of equipment that goes on the roof of the package car to track the RFID labels, right? Which will be used to cut down on part-timers. And that's a whole different discussion that we need to talk about. And that's automation. And it's coming, and it's going to hit us. And before we know it, our union is going to be broken. It's gonna be broken. Our pensions are gonna go down the toilet. Those things were not addressed in the contract. So we saw these things, and that's where I knew for myself and a lot of other drivers that I spoke to that was a deal breaker, and we had to vote no on it. unfortunately, like I said, the lack of education and the class collaboration between the union and management, and the fact that they had organizers selling this contract at our gates, made this thing pass. If we had a union that actually educated its members and actually wanted a good deal, would have rejected all of that, would have gave us the protections, especially against technology harassment and automation and AI. None of those things happen. None of those things happen. And we're in a place right now where they're going to start to automate the buildings. We're going to see massive amounts of part-timers laid off, routes cut, you name it. You know, they're already talking about laying off their own management personnel. I don't know. I heard some. I don't know. It's in the thousands. I don't know the exact numbers. Maybe somebody could speak on that. So, you know, even they're eating their own right now, and this is where we're at. And that's because you know, the union didn't want to fight. I mean, they wanted to give us. I mean, I'm not going to say the monetary, you know, part of the contract isn't good. It's okay. It could have been better. But just imagine what we could have won if we went on a strike. Imagine what kind of trade unionist we would have churned out if we would have went on a strike. We would have gave that same kind of class consciousness the 97 strike gave me to those workers. That's what's lacking in our union right now. We need to flex that strike muscle, and we're just not doing it.
Yeah. Jennifer, Jess, you guys got some insights into sort of what's been going on.
Big Will stole most of my talking points. So I was going to talk about.
He got really into it. He couldn't help
he got
himself.
into it. He got the whole shot on me.
Sorry, man.
I was going to talk about automation. Right now, they're going to be automating my building, so that's obviously an issue on my mind, and how I can protect the employees at my building from any issues around automating the building. But I will. Oh, I'll also say I'm sure the money was okay for the full timers, but I got to tell you, as a part timer, I think the money was terrible. So
Yeah,
throw that in there. The IBT. To go back to Colby's the second part of the question about the IBT. The IBT has basically spent the last year in this dog and pony show around the presidential election. I swear they can basically only focus on one large thing, and they can't seem to do anything else. They depend on the locals to be the ones advocating for their employees around things like automation. And that's what I'm doing. I'm working with my union to protect as many of our part-time employees from the downsides of automation, probably by job transfer is what we're going to be working on. But to give an example, but to talk about the other things that the IBT could have been doing. 22.3 jobs. There's actually something in the contract about UPS is supposed to be making more of these part-time jobs, combining them and making a full-time job. That's what a 22.3 is for anyone. Going forward, when I talk about that, that is a full-time job. Apparently, according to our contract, UPS is supposed to have created a certain number of these full-time jobs over at least the last 2 contracts and has not met those numbers. I can't see those numbers. This is something the IBT is supposed to be following up on. This right there would solve so many problems for our part-timers by having more full-time jobs. One of the complaints, or not complaints, one of the attacks by these organizers that Big Will was and unfortunately some of our fellow Teamsters was that part-timers are greedy or they're lazy. Why don't they go work a full-time job? It's not that easy. The full-time, when I started 3 decades ago, it was still a 10-year wait to go full-time. I can't realistically tell you what it is now. But it's not, Jess mentioned this, there are many people who want to work a full-time job. But if the full-time job is not there, you have the choice of waiting around until there's a full-time job or leaving to find another full-time job. So yes, the IBT, instead of, this whole thing around the presidential endorsement, which of course they went with no endorsement after all the time and effort they've wasted on it, could be doing things like pushing UPS to create more full-time jobs. Jess?
Yeah, there's been at least 100 sort and building closures. And some of those people don't have the option to move to another building. Some people's work is being moved an hour and a half away. As I mentioned, a lot of part-timers are making less than $100 a day already. So asking them to drive 2 hours round trip to make, 80, 90 bucks, again, it's not feasible. And they know that what's going to result from this is people leaving. Great, right? They're putting up or remodeling buildings with technology that's already going to include less workers, but now it's also going to include new workers at a lower wage. So, one of the things this contract did, you probably heard them hail that they were abolishing tiers, right? They didn't abolish tiers. They added a whole new tier. In the rough draft of the TA, they actually called these folks the unborn. The unborn, anybody hired after August 1st of 2023, they were going to come in at $21 an hour, but every year of the contract, they would only receive a 50 cents raise each year. So a current part-timer at the end of the contract would be making closer to almost $26 an hour. Whereas somebody that started after the contract, at the end of the contract, they're only going to be making 23, and that's if they started right when the contract was ratified. So they're creating a further disparity. They're not closing the gap with part-time and full-time. They're actually increasing it, right? And it builds up that mentality of, I'm going to worry about me. I got mine. I'm going to vote yes, right? Whereas my mentality is, I have the next person's back before they've ever walked through the door. I'm not going to vote on something that screws the next person that's coming behind me. That is not a union mentality. That is not how you build solidarity and power. You have everybody's interest in mind, right? Not just what benefits you as one single worker, but what benefits everybody? What lifts up the whole working class? What benefits all Teamsters? Why should somebody coming after me get less than what I got? That makes no sense. And that is not a message that we need to be sending to our fellow Teamsters. We need to all be working together. Just like I'm going to advocate for a part-time issue. Just like I would advocate for a part-time issue. The heat issue in the trucks. It is absolute insanity. We also have heat issues inside the building. So that's not to say the heat's not affecting us as well, but what they're doing to the drivers in these hot boxes, sending them out in the heat, working 10, 12 hours a day, it is unforgivable. People are dying, and I can advocate for them, even though I have no interest in getting in one of those hot boxes and driving. I can still see that it's wrong, right? We have to address all issues collectively. We go and we need to win gains for everybody, gains and protections. The union mentality is to leave it better than you found it. If you're not giving the next person behind you something better, what are we even doing?
Exactly. Yeah. And that dovetails right into sort of the next thing that I wanted to address. And maybe we can just, Jess, if you wanted to jump in on this. So, and Big Will sort of talked about this a little bit, and Jennifer's alluded to this. So we'd sort of, this webinar had been talking about radical labor organizing, right? And the need for that process to sort of happen. And while there's a political component of it, I think really and I would argue that fundamental to the politics of it, what you all have been talking about, where the solidarity, the unionism is like a concept from worker to worker, building union worker power. What is TM's strategy going forward on this specifically? Like when you look at building worker power, what does that look like as a TM operation, and even within sort of cross business dynamics, right? Because obviously you have groups like UAW, you have these other big unions that are doing work, but where is the sort of fundamental, use radical lowercase r, organizing? How does TM fit into that? Where do you see yourselves going on that front specifically, and how do we connect that need for more radical organizing across sort of the labor movement?
I guess I'll take that first. Yeah, me and Jose out of Local 952, we've been doing a lot of that. We've been visiting the student encampments at Cal State LA, building bridges with them, making sure they know that their fight with the, with the administration there is our fight too, building solidarity with the student movement in this country. Building bridges with the UAW workers on strike. We just visited a picket line in the City of Commerce with the Monogram Aerospace workers, making sure they know that we're there for them, that Teamsters and Teamsters Mobilize is there for them. So that way, when it's their turn, our turn, they could be there for us. That's the kind of organizing that I envision. I envision us, going picket line to picket line and spreading the word of Teamsters Mobilize, which is educate and mobilize, right? That's what I envision. I also envision us going back to when I first started at UPS, right? The like I said, going back to the education piece. The education piece is missing. It's missing right now. That's why we're having so much division, so much infighting about things in the contract. That needs to stop, and we need to speak to each other in order for that to stop, right? We need to make sure that we see each other as equals and not as fighting for crumbs, whatever that UPS throws at us. So that's just one piece. Another piece is, like I said, the 1997 strike. If you're not willing to strike, you're not going to build a type of trade unionist in this country that we need. You're just not. You're not going to do it. You're going to build a person that's apathetic, that doesn't care. Just give me my raise and that's it. They look at the union as an insurance policy, and that's not the way it is. It's more than that. It's you engaging with the community. It's you being involved in democracy in your community. It's you building democracy at work, right? Advocating for more in your union. That's what radical organizing for me looks like. And it's going to take every single Teamsters Mobilize member to build that type of radical worker democracy.
I'm going to build on the same themes that Big Will was talking about, which is educating the part-timer about what it means to be a Teamster member. Some of the fraud, we're trying to organize a very large population of employees spread out across the US. So we're trying to put some things in place so that we become essentially a trusted source of information for the UPS part-timer. This is still in the very beginning stages, but we've talked about some sort of Ask a Shop Steward program where people can ask us questions about the contract or contract about the questions about their workplace that they're facing right now. That's what all of us actually do in our day-to-day lives. We help our fellow workers dealing with issues with management or questions they have. When can I sign up for the 401k? What do my benefits cover? Or my supervisor is harassing me. What do? File a grievance. Here's a grievance form. Let me help you fill it out. It's just stuff like that that let our coworkers know that we are there as a resource to help them. So we're talking about educating our members. Oh, the second point I wanted to make is we've been having a discussion about what we want to ask for in the next contract already. We have a rough draft ready to get that we're working on right now so that we can get that out to part-timers and say, this is what we're going to ask for in the next contract. Won't you join us and help us work towards this? Jess?
Colby, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's just thinking about just thinking also about what Big Will and Jennifer just said, you know, from the perspective of building doing sort of radical labor organizing, sort of how that looks from a TM perspective at this point going forward, as you try and sort of change that that fundamental dynamic of being, you know, in the union and what the union's actually doing.
Yeah, so I would say just pushing back, right? We have a lot of different ways to push back. And you know, it's been talked about a lot here, but it starts with education. If you don't know what all your rights are, how can you confidently exercise those rights? Right? You know, we have rights within the contract, we have rights within the law, and it's kind of a lot of different places, right? Like I said, they're kind of sprinkled around. And then we have a lot of options with what we can do as, you know, a form of recourse. You know, the union loves to tell you to just work now and grieve later, right? Basically, just be a good little boy and, you know, put it on paper, which is great. You always need to file your grievances. That's important. But when you see time and time again, and you know, I've had so many people come to me from other buildings, other states that are upset because their grievances were not settled properly. When you go in, say you file a safety grievance, the company always wants to settle the safety grievances as company will comply, right? Oh, well, we're gonna do right by safety, and that's all they want to say. Well, when you settle that way, and then they go right back and they do the same thing, then you go back in the office with another grievance and you settle it again as company will comply, right? There's zero accountability, zero consequences. The company takes that and wipes their ass with it. It doesn't matter at all. They're not going to change anything they're doing. But when you get a settlement, it's supposed to be binding. So if you settle one time as company will comply, that second time, you don't settle as company will comply. They've already bargained in bad faith. They said they would comply. They didn't comply. That is a violation of the National Labor Relations Act because you did not bargain in good faith. You did not have any intention of upholding safety in the building. You said that so you could throw that grievance in the trash and continue business as usual. You know, we're settling too many grievances as company will comply. With things like supervisors working, right? Our contract says that the first two occurrences, supervisors working, are paid at double time for all hours worked. After that second one, they're paid at quadruple time for all hours worked. But what you see during these settlements, let's say you have 100 hours of suit working grievances filed, right? When they go in there to settle it, they're going to negotiate it down, right? And what they actually settle for depends on how strong and how militant your steward is in there, how strong your local is. You know, my own business agent tells stewards that if the company's offering to settle with you at 50%, you ought to go ahead and take it, because you're not going to get any more than 50% at panel. So they're saying that even if you take that to panel, you're not going to get any more than half of what it's worth. And I've heard multiple occasions of supervisors working grievances being settled at like 10% of what they're worth, right? What does that tell the membership? When you say, oh, file your grievance, and then you go in there and you settle it for pennies on the dollar, or you settle it as company will comply. They tell us to file on harassment, retaliation, right? What do they want to settle it for? Company will comply? No, that stuff doesn't mean anything. That shows weakness. That does not show strength. That tells the company that they can do whatever they want and there's never going to be any real consequence, right? Even the money that they owe us contractually, they're not even having to pay, which is still nothing to them. But we're not even making them pay what our contract dictates. If we're going to let them walk all over our contract, that's weak. That is weak. The union is afraid to stand up to this company and make them do what our contract says they're going to do, right? We may not have the contract that we want, but we should at least be enforcing our contract to its highest potential. Don't settle. Don't cut this company this slack. Every single day, the company violates that contract. They don't even do what's required of them. But yet we're going to do something that the contract doesn't even require of us. We're going to go above and beyond. We're going to like let them off the hook with not enforcing the contract even during these grievance settlements. So telling people to file grievances and then them being settled this way, do you think that that's going to make people want to file more grievances or less grievances?
Yeah. I mean, those are all really good points. And as we pivot to sort of the end here, we have about a half an hour left. And I want to encourage folks that are in attendance. There's a Q&A area, and we can get some questions in there that we can address. But a lot of this, what we've sort of been hearing about, what you guys have been addressing, dealing with this stuff. Obviously, there's a critical need for systemic, substantial change. So as we think about sort of the end here, before we get to the questions, real quick, thinking about sort of where we go from here, both TM, the wider labor movement that we're all sort of concerned about, and UPS and IBT. So those are all sort of in the mix, but curious what you folks are thinking about going forward.
Really quick, I just want to jump on what Jess said about what she was talking about grievances real quick, right? And I think it also goes into your question right now. Grievances and the grievance process in unions is broken. It's a broken tactic that puts the power into the hands of the union bureaucracy and UPS bureaucracy. We should move toward a direct action model. For example, right? We have drivers around this country being killed because of excessive heat. Why isn't the union organizing a march on the boss on that? Why aren't we doing something like that? That would be something transformative, not only to show, your fellow union members what direct action looks like and taking action looks like. It would do so much to radicalize them, to take matters into their own hands and take, safety and the union serious. But that's not happening. They do it through the grievance process, which doesn't go nowhere. You get a monetary, you get monetarily paid for it. I mean, it doesn't do nothing. It just creates labor peace. We should not be having any sort of labor peace right now. And the other obstacle is labor law, right? We have to think about labor law. All these union bureaucrats think about labor law and, we have to have labor peace. We can't strike. We can't do this and that. Well, let me tell you something. When your member is being killed, you better do something. You better wildcat strike. I mean, we've seen, every summer it seems like 3-4 drivers get killed and nothing's happened. Nothing's happening, and we need more direct action. And like I said, the grievance process is completely broken. We need a new model, and it's something that we need to talk about And I'm glad we're here talking about it. And I think, you know, we should move on this. We should move on this conversation about what should we be putting into our contract? Should we be putting labor peace in there? Or like my brother Jose would say, you know, a reopener with the right to strike. If, for any sort of issue that we have, whether it be harassment, heat, safety related issues, you know, a whole host of issues, but we're not thinking like that. It's like another 5 years until the next contract fight. And in between you settle it with the grievance process where the company can do whatever it wants. Like right now, it's just completely sweeping these deaths under the rug. And I think that's just, I mean, for me, that's a crime against my brothers and sisters that have died on the job. It's just that simple. I mean, we need action. We just got to stop. We got to stop doing these grievances.
Yes, Jennifer, jump on in.
I do not disagree with Big Will, but I also will mention that I'm the political coordinator for my own union. So when I get into all the political direction, that's not the purpose of this call. I agree that we actually need new laws in this country around labor. The laws that we had were essentially a compromise to reach labor peace, and they're no longer working for us. But I also will mention that I live in a right to work state, and I can't even, you know, it's been a very long struggle just to get that overturned. And I have, you know, I can't tell you when that's going to happen. So I don't really, like I said, I won't distract the conversation. I'll go ahead and pass it over to Jess. I agree with Will that we need new labor law. So what we have now is not working.
Yeah. You know, one of the reasons that, you know, these contracts have, you know, no right to strike, that's to limit the power of the workers. And when you have that, your hands are tied, right? Even the union officials, right? They don't even necessarily have the power to strike because they've agreed to that sort of thing. So it's not like they can just up and decide one day, like, you know, we're going to go on a strike, because then they open themselves up to, you know, legal proceedings, fines, you know. When you look at the resources that the union has compared to the companies, it doesn't even compare. The companies have unlimited resources, right? So the union is very fearful about something that could get them caught up in something that could completely deplete those resources. And so we bow down, we cave, we make these concessions to these big companies, and it further and further takes away the power that we have, right? So we've kind of put ourselves in this box of like not really having that much power. And so, you know, we're left with the grievance process. We're left with, you know, what the NLRA gives us, which, like Jennifer mentioned, like that came about to like Big Will said, bring labor peace, right? And it ultimately hinders the power that we have. It hinders what we can do. And that was intentional, right? You know, that was put into place. I'm sure it was largely funded, largely created by, you know, capitalism, big corporations. They wanted to limit that power because ultimately all they care about is production. As long as they can keep the production going, they don't care if they write you a check, right? As long as they keep the millions and billions flowing. And as long as we don't have the power to withhold our labor, the power is going to remain in the corporation's hands. And so we have to start these changes of trying to change policies, trying to build that worker power and help people to see that the means of production needs to lie in the hands of the workers, right? We're never going to be treated seriously and treated with respect when we don't have any power, right? If your boss knew that you could cut his money off by you guys walking out the door, might act a little different. things might look a little different with the way they treat you, right? And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. People need to be treated with dignity and respect. And we don't get that. The working class does not get that. They're treated like they don't matter. They're completely disposable in every way, right? The safety you see inside the buildings, I mean, it is completely unsafe. You see mountains of packages everywhere, right? It's completely unsafe, but nobody cares, right? Even most workers on the shop floor, they don't realize that they have the right to press that stop button. You stop the progress. By law, you have a right to safety. You have a right to egress, which means you should have a clear work area at all times. In the event of an emergency, you have to be able to get out.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, you have the right to stop the progress. That mess needs to be cleaned up before progress can be restarted. But even if you press that stop button, you have multiple supervisors. Oh, what's going on? What are we doing? Why's the belt off? Oh, we got to get the belt back on.
Yep.
Because they don't care about the people. Just keep the packages flowing. People might be getting buried in packages. Whoop, keep it going. You know, people don't even realize that very fundamental right of you need to have a safe work area, and you can actually stop the belt if you don't. And people are fearful because they see every day their coworkers being retaliated against.
Yep.
And what happens when you're retaliated against? Nothing. Even if you file that grievance, what happens? Nothing. There is no consequence to the company, right? So it keeps people fearful to actually try to exercise their right, especially when they see that nothing's going to come of it, and not just nothing, but harm to them, retaliation. Yeah. They're going to see their work area moved. They're going to see their hours cut. They're going to see these different things that's actually going to make their life harder, not better. So, you know, when people start speaking out, sometimes they see the opposite of what they hope. Instead of seeing something good come of it, something bad's coming of it. You know, and we're, you know, the stewards, the business agents, the local leadership, they're allowing it to happen, right? We knew how rampant this stuff was, and we knew that we needed these protections in our contract, and we got nothing. We got none of those things in our contract. During one of the contract action trainings at my local, they did a thing where they put poster boards up, and each poster board had like a single issue on it. And they gave each person 2 sticky notes. The blue one was like first priority. The green one was second priority. And everybody got up and they went and they put their Post-it notes on these boards. And the only poster board where you could no longer see the poster board was harassment and retaliation. That was every person's either first or second priority, because that is something we all face at the hands of this company. And did we get any protection around that in our contract? Absolutely not, because that is one of the things that helps that company maintain control, is treating people the way that they do, right? Because we talked about it. You know, it either makes people keep their head down in hopes of not being retaliated against, not filing the grievance because they don't want to be retaliated against. And it gets to you so bad that a lot of people leave. It affects your mental health so badly. And all those things are pluses for the company. Any of those things that happen as a result of it benefit the company. And we just let them continue on that way. So we have to start making these changes that actually benefit in a better work environment, a better quality of life for the worker. Because, you know, people right now are so exhausted and just trying to survive that they can barely keep their head above water, right? So there's not time and energy left to pour into the fight. But we need more and more people to join the fight, and not just the contractual fight, but we need people to speak up against the internal stuff within the union. Talk about what's wrong. Talk about what needs to change. Because if you're not willing to, first of all, acknowledge it, then you can't start to change it, right? And, you know, a lot of people want to think that you shouldn't say anything bad, you shouldn't criticize. Change is not going to happen like that. It's okay to talk about what's wrong and what needs to change. We can talk about what's good. We can talk about what the union does for us, because we're better off with a union than without a union. So let's talk about the positives of a union. Let's praise those things, and let's talk about how we can make our unions better and stronger and fight harder.
Yep.
Because as we all know, union density has steadily declined, right? And we have to build that back up. But by pretending that nothing's wrong within the union, that's not going to happen. We have to tackle all the problems, not just one little problem here or there, because it's such a big fight in so many different ways that we have to target all of that.
Yeah. And I feel like your description of the button, the stop button, and the conveyor belt and what goes on is a metaphor for the entire thing, like the bigger picture, right? Like knowing that you have that access and actualizing it and knowing that they're going to be mad about it, and you know, that's the description of the system right there. I want to turn to some questions that we have. Lillette asks about, and I hopefully you guys can see this, and I was having a conversation, so hopefully you could actually see what she wrote in here, about solidarity strikes, specifically, I think, you know, in other industries where they're trying to organize, and if there's anything with Teamsters, TM, looking to target elected officials or other policymakers to get these laws changed about stopping solidarity strikes. So I'm just wondering if there's any thoughts from you all on that. I mean, I'm going to assume there's probably some support for finding ways to actually go out and do solidarity strikes, but I'll let you all take that, whoever wants to jump on that.
Big Will, you're muted.
My apologies. Yeah, solidarity strikes are very important. We need to put those into law if we're going to have any type of success in the labor movement. If we had, just imagine if we had a solidarity strike with Amazon in terms of the logistics center, how much power we would have over the economy, how much power we would wield over the bosses. I mean, that would be huge. And that's why any politician in this system that is not for the abolition of Taft-Hartley, that's not for the PRO Act, should not deserve any of our votes, right? And I don't think the Democratic or Republican Party will do any of those things. So it's going to be up to the working class to build movements from the bottom up in order to agitate on the streets to get those laws passed, you know? And, you know, it's going to be, frankly, time to break some laws. You know, we have boss law in this country, as the great Jane McAlevey would say. We don't have labor laws, we have boss laws. And those boss laws, they need to be broken. And I'm hoping that what the UAW has started for everybody to align their contracts in May 1st will happen. I sincerely doubt that my union will participate in that, because we're too busy speaking to fascists at their fascist convention, and instead of speaking to other workers and speaking about worker power. So, you know, but as Teamsters Mobilize, we're here. We're going to support any of those things. So you can count on us on all of that. And if not, we'll be there on those picket lines.
Yes, make sure any politician that you're interested in voting for supports the PRO Act. They're right there. It would be, but I also want to point out that I realized that the law, changing laws is a project that's going to take many years. So I will encourage anyone who's on here that if there are workers on strike in your area, go stand on their picket line. Being on the picket line is very lonely, and having union members from other unions come out to support can brighten a worker's whole day. So I genuinely, if you know of anyone that if you can reach them, go. Jess.
Yeah, building that solidarity. Yeah, it starts with the person right beside you at work, right? We all see these injustices, right? Talk to them, tell them what they can do, tell them what their options are. And sometimes, you know what? Speak for that person, right? If they haven't found their voice, be their voice. When you see them being treated wrong, stand up for them and say, no, absolutely not. We're not doing that. You're not going to do that to this person. They have rights. And that's part of, I'm a shop steward, but anybody can act the part of a shop steward. You don't have to have the title of a steward to be a shop floor leader, to stand up for the person beside you. Because when you're in there, a lot of times it feels like you are all alone, right? So maybe what that person needs to spark some fight in them is for them to see that somebody's got their back, right? Somebody cares about them, cares about their rights, sees something wrong and is willing to say something about it. Because you never know. Next month, that same person may be able to speak for themselves. 6 months after that, maybe they're speaking up for the person beside them, right? It takes one little act to help other people find that confidence, right? And maybe, maybe what they learn from you, they start asking more questions. Maybe they attend a union meeting. Maybe they look into policy. Maybe they look into the rights they have through the NLRA, right? Maybe they look into stuff. So they start learning because of one small act that you did for them. My people on my shop floor, they come to me for anything and everything because they know that no matter what, I've got their back. If they're being treated wrong, I've got their back, and I'm going to do what I can to get shit done. I've seen people on my shop floor come in, they're sick, they can barely work, or they get sick during their shift. And the supervisor try to tell them, oh, you can't leave. We don't have anybody to take your spot. No, absolutely not. That is bullshit. And if it is not safe for you to work, by law, if it is not safe for you to continue working, you can absolutely go home, right? If you're so ill and you're so fatigued that you cannot safely work, that is a safety issue. Staffing is on the company. These companies, especially UPS, they purposely understaff. They purposely try to get the work done with an insufficient amount of people because it sets it up that, oh, well, we only have this many people, so we're going to have to just try to do whatever we can to get it done. No, absolutely not. I tell my people, you have one pace. You work at a safe pace following the methods, a safe 30-year pace. And you don't change that because of the incompetence of the company, right? If they were too incompetent to start the operation on time to get the work done, that's on them. If they didn't staff the operation enough, that is on them. Don't pick up their slack. The slogan within UPS is the harder you work, the harder they'll work you. And that is true every single time. If they think they can get more out of you, they're going to put more on you. And they will do it until people literally break. We see people mentally breaking, physically breaking with injuries. We see it out here in the heat with people physically dying or going to the hospital and having to get 12 bags of fluids to recover from what the company has done to them. And people think that they have no other option in those situations. So, we have to build that solidarity. We have to engage with our fellow workers, and we have to empower them to fight back. So, maybe more and more people will join this fight because we need everybody to fight monsters that we need to tackle to bring this system down and turn the tides and get the power back into the hands of the workers.
Amen. We have one more question. We can try and get through quickly before we are out of here. Eric Chester is a member of the labor working group with Bill and myself. He's asking how TM widens its scope to include Teamsters who do not work for UPS. I wonder if you guys could speak about those sorts of actions.
I don't really have a polished answer here. We're working on it. We are a small group. And as I said, we're all UPSers. We came out of UPS. All Teamsters are welcome in TM. But we're not particularly organized around that just yet. We're still growing. Jess, Big Will, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, we're like my sister said, we're in our infancy stages right now. We do have that I've seen in our chat group, one member or two that are not UPS Teamsters. I don't know, I may be wrong on that, but I think there might be in other industries. But you know, if you're out there and you're a Teamster and you want to join us and you're listening to this right now, go to our website, join up, and become part of the movement. You know, we welcome all Teamsters, freight Teamsters, grocery Teamsters. We all have our issues. You know, warehouse Teamsters, cannabis Teamsters. Come and join Teamsters Mobilize. We're here for radical solidarity and education. So that's my call out there. And I just want to say one more thing though, real quick, guys. Since we're in we're in a starting group, we need more comrades to join the movement. And I'm talking socialist comrades out there. Get a job at UPS. It's easy to become a part-timer. It's not that hard. Well, I don't know, back in my time, it was kind of easy, but run as a steward. Let's start taking these locals back. Let's start advocating for reversing these unfair labor laws. You know, all of that. Let's get to work. Let's go.
Thanks, Big Will. Jess?
Yeah, we actually we have several people within TM that are not Teamsters. You know, they may have found us through a different way. Maybe it was, you know, our support of the ongoing genocide that they found us. You know, things like that, calling out union leadership, exposing some of this undemocratic behavior. And a lot of our issues are not exclusive to the Teamsters. They're working class issues. Whether people are, you know, maybe not yet in a union or whether they're in other unions, like these issues are common amongst other unions and amongst the working class. So, you know, they can learn from us and we can learn from them because, you know, our perspective is largely UPS. So it's really good for us to see and hear from these other people in these other other industries, whether they be Teamsters or, you know, non-union employees at all, because even though we have a lot of commonality, there are still things about what they're dealing with that we don't already know. So, you know, we can learn from one another and we can build that solidarity up, and it just brings awareness overall, right? Because, you know, maybe we can then spread the word about what they're dealing with that we didn't know before, you know, they came in and told us these things. So, you know, we welcome everybody to come in, you know, tell us what you're dealing with. We want to hear about it. You know, if there's something that we can do to support that, like we want to be able to do that. If there's something that we can offer to help you, we want to do that. Because this is, you know, just a small part of a really, really big fight. So there's nothing negative that can come from somebody from another industry coming in and joining us, or somebody that's not even unionized yet. Maybe they want to learn about, you know, where do I even start with this process? How do I go about making my workplace a better workplace? So yeah, we welcome, you know, anybody that says, you know what, we like what these people are saying today. I identify with a lot of this stuff. You know, reach out to us. Go to our website, fill out the form. Somebody will reach out to you. We have an open call tomorrow afternoon, 1 p.m. Eastern time. Hop on that call. We want to see new faces. We want to hear new voices. We care about all workers. This is not just some exclusive club that we're gatekeeping, right? You see that in some unions where it's like, well, we don't want other people to have what we have. No, absolutely. We want everybody to have what we have and more. We want to grow that. We're not gatekeeping. We don't feel like, well, if they get more, we might somehow get less. No, absolutely not. Our country, these corporations, they're profiting in the billions and billions. There's enough resources for everybody to thrive. We're just going to have to fight to take that back.
And with that, I will say thank you. Is there anything that you guys want to say with our last minutes here? Any issues, any thoughts, any last sort of things that may happen? Go Big Will.
I got something. First of all, I'd like to say that Teamsters Mobilize, we are a multi-tendency, not unabashedly left-wing group. And if you find yourself in that situation like us, in the left, we're the left flank of the Teamsters. And if you like that, come and join us. We are probably some of the most militant Teamsters you'll find out there. And we're here for everyone. We're here to protect our jobs, protect our safety at work. That's what we're here. We got each other's backs. Those are my last comments.
Jess, Jennifer, anything else? No, you're good. All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to Bill here to close us out, but this has been, I think, a fantastic conversation. I think you guys have brought not only incredible insight into sort of what's going on with your union, but really given us a perspective on the larger issues that are facing workers out there for, across the country. So really do appreciate your time and energy and effort and everything that you do. So thank you, Bill. I turn it over to you to close us out.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer, Jess, and Will. This is fantastic. We learned more about inside stuff, what's going on with the Teamsters, but the great work that has to be done. We'll do what we can to put this forward to our members and to the public at large. This is the group to work with and to organize. And I hope, as my question, I put in the question, what about Amazon? That's all part of the logistics package delivery system. Industry in general, and DHL, FedEx, even the post office, we're all in the same areas, but it's a huge area, and you need militant unionism going on there. So thank you very much on behalf of the Labor Working Group, Socialist Party USA. We thank you very much. Good luck in your work.